And now for our feature presentation.
This is the Botching Up Podcast number 10. Our feature on this episode is the Taker documentary. Let's go.
Right, before we start, I just wanted to give a brief rest in peace to Larry Zonka. I'm not sure whether you know him, but he's been an integral part of my life for 10 years without me ever really realizing. He was a wrestling journalist for 411 Mania who reviewed literally everything. It didn't matter what country it was, it didn't matter whether it was WWE main event, he would have a review up within an hour or so of the show. I actually felt really sad about this because I realized that he had been a tiny but an integral part of my life for a decade. If I couldn't be bothered to watch a show, I would read Zonka's review. If I needed analysis of a finish, if we're doing this podcast, I'd read Zonka's review. If I couldn't be bothered to watch shows, and we've both been in that bit where we've spent 6-8 months just completely off wrestling before AEW came around, I would just read his reviews, just to keep up a little bit without really going back into it and watching it myself. I'd like to say rest in peace to Larry Zonka. I will pull one out for you.
Yeah, he'll be greatly missed.
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to mention him because it was a big part of the wrestling industry for me.
Yeah.
Undertaker, The Last Ride.
Well, this was a fun little documentary.
I thought it was fantastic.
It was definitely well shot.
My girlfriend thought it was fantastic. As just an outsider, she just loved it, and I think by doing that they've achieved what they were attempting to with the whole association with Michael Jordan's Last Dance.
Yeah, I've been watching that actually, and I'm not even a big fan of basketball, but that is amazing.
I haven't watched it. I've heard great things about it, but I think they achieved the same sort of thing with this, where they get people that don't necessarily know anything about the product at all to get invested in somebody's story.
Yeah, and I really think they've managed to save face with him. The whole idea that they never wanted to show the behind the curtain of Taker throughout his entire career. They want to ruin the character. But I think even with that in mind, you still haven't ruined the character by showing just how, I guess, old school and hardcore dedicated he is to the business and to the character.
This made me really think about the current breed of wrestler. Undertaker has spent 30 years being the Undertaker, and it's only now, as he knows his career is winding down, that he chooses the cameras to film him as Mark Calaway. And it really separates itself from like Evil Uno, who I still can't get over, posted a wish list of things that he wanted to do in the next 10 years in his career, one of which was have a video game stream. How am I supposed to take the guy seriously? He wants to stream video games, and that's something that he aspires to do.
That's the highlight of his career, is it?
No, that's something that he had on his checklist that he hadn't done yet, that he wanted to do in the next 10 years.
That's been done. Xavier Woods has done that gimmick. No one else can do it like him now.
It seems like literally every wrestler's got a Twitch.
Yeah, but it's his thing, you know? He started it. He's known for it. Nobody can get to the same level as him, I don't think.
Oh, definitely. I think Xavier Wood has made himself a career for when he retires. But the point I'm making is you're not going to see Undertaker on a fucking video game streaming site. You're not going to see it, and you're not going to see Mark Calaway. You know what Mark Calaway does? Mark Calaway sits in his chair wearing alt-right Republican gear, waiting for the next person to beat up. Mark Calaway is the Undertaker. The Undertaker is Mark Calaway, and living the gimmick as old school as that and showing respect to the business that he's in really stood out for me in comparison to most of the wrestling talent around at the moment who see it as their professional job. And I can see a big difference between the old school, which are dying and dead and dying off like The Undertaker, and, a Trey from Impact.
It did stick out to me as well that different worlds we live in now. But do you think that's because of the culture we live in? The wrestlers can't just be their gimmicks anymore. They have to do this more self-promotion, which The Undertaker didn't have to do.
I do agree with that. I think it would be quite difficult for The Undertaker to have a Twitter account. And if he doesn't have a Twitter account in 2020, then he's less noticeable than people that do have a Twitter account. I would say that if you have a certain character, I'm speaking more to the heels than the baby faces, you need to be the heel on Twitter. you say that it's harder now than it was before, and with the Undertaker having a sort of supernatural gimmick, I'm not sure he could pull it off in the same way now. But just look at MJF for social media use. MJF is never not MJF. Doesn't care about doing video game streamings. He calls out the Mountain Dew nerd sitting in their mum's basement for doing a video game stream. Then you've got Evil Uno, who's supposed to be a heel, saying that that's on his wish list. Who do you prefer? Who do you think's cooler?
Yeah, that's what I said last week with MGF. The bad guys shouldn't be scared to be heels outside on social media, but outside of the shows. They should continue their character, and that really gets them over even more as just being these dickhead heels that you want to boo. It adds to the character.
I do think there's a middle line. I'm not saying that everybody should go be the Taker at this documentary. And I don't think you can live the gimmick as much as you used to be able to. But you should always be on the gimmick, I think. It makes the most money. If nothing else than just making money, if that's all you care about, then you're going to make more money from being the gimmick whenever you're in social presence. Like, MJF might well have a video game streaming site in his spare time. Nobody knows. He might do it privately under a anonymous username, but he's not publicizing it. What this documentary showed me most clearly is that The Undertaker, above all, respects the audience, which is why I think that he's had such a successful career.
Also, right at the beginning, you got Mick Foley, Ric Flair, and Bret Hart, and they are all talking about Undertaker as the character. And the three of them generally say that he is the character, and I've heard this from wrestlers before, that the best personas are your true self amped to 100.
Yeah.
So, although he's got the supernatural stuff, he even says that he's never really faking anything. He is him, although he can't rise from the dead and he doesn't have lightning bolt power. He's still playing him, which has added to the longevity of the character. And he said that less is more when it comes to the character work, which probably with Twitter, it's hard to do less and get over more nowadays than it was back in the 90s.
True. And a semi-related point. For some reason, I found myself watching a documentary on The Big Show from 2009, and he was talking about the frustration that he felt when he first got into WWE, because he knew that he could jump off the top rope and he could do the flips and he had the work rate. I think either Vince or Taker, or maybe both, pulled him aside and said, "Hey man, you're not paid for wrestling matches. We pay you to get over." And I think that's a very important thing that The Undertaker has kept with him for his entire career. Like, we saw that even in his later days, the guy can go. And he can probably do the frog splashes and stuff. He's got the ability. He's got the athletic ability. But he decided to have very slow, plodding matches, which I think they actually mention in this documentary because it suits his character.
Yeah, he does the slow matches on purpose so that in the last 3-5 minutes of the match, when he has this rush of energy and the match suddenly becomes fast paced, it generates more excitement in the crowd.
But this is another point I guess we could talk about. The 2020 wrestling audience is a lot more intelligent in a way than the 80s, 90s audience. We no longer see the spots where the babyface's hand goes down twice before going up. The wrestling business, I think, has got a lot more complicated as to what people are looking for. The matches have increased in excitement in a way, and the work rate has increased. And I think maybe naturally that's why popularity has gone down, is because it's just a different type of audience.
Yeah, well, you can't have the same kind of storytelling you had back then because, like you said, the pacing of the matches are completely different now. So it's harder to do the comeback kind of storyline. I mean, you can with tag matches, I suppose, with the one guy getting beaten down. It's a different world, and this is always my argument with Jim Cornette, that he gets so angry, but like the business has changed and it's going to be forever evolving. You just got to learn what the audience wants next.
I think John Moxley summed up The Undertaker the best in a little interview he did. He mentioned watching WrestleMania 36 and enjoying it immensely, and he called The Undertaker John Wayne, or John McClane from Die Hard. He had become this sort of icon, this legendary hero beyond just a wrestling legend, who had sort of ingrained himself into a popular culture in which he's permanently larger than life. And I think this documentary, even with Mark Calloway, it felt like the personal life of John Wayne. He's gotten to a certain point now in his stature where he finally unveils the mask and he's no longer the Undertaker, and he's still just as larger than life, even without the character.
Yeah, he's definitely a persona backstage that we've never really seen before.
Just seeing Roman Reigns relaxing and having a pint with the Undertaker made Roman Reigns look 10 times a superstar to me than he is promoted as on WWE TV. And this is my first note on the Undertaker documentary. I just wrote that I think they need to hire the documentary makers to write the scripts.
It's because when WWE hire these people to extra stuff, these people aren't controlled by Vince, so they get kind of free reign to go make. It's not just this documentary; it's all the other stuff they do for the network. A lot of the stuff often is better than Raw.
I don't know whether you saw in the build-up to WrestleMania, Drew McIntyre. They had a little vignette where he goes to Scotland, and it was beautifully shot, and it was really aesthetically interesting, and it was cool. It was cool looking, and it was so obvious that it wasn't made by WWE. And then I realized that it was actually made by BT Sport. And of course, because it was made by BT Sport, they showed it, I think, once in 4 weeks build-up.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, isn't it? We're always saying it's the audience of one person, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So let's get into this documentary. The biggest thing for me was that the self-doubt in himself. You wouldn't have thought about that about The Undertaker, but as he gets older, he doesn't think he can go.
Yeah, it was weird to me. It was a double-edged sword because I thought he was incredibly self-aware for a wrestler. You just assume that wrestling personalities aren't as existential as that, and they're not thinking about winding up their career. I mean, for fuck's sake, Ric Flair's not. You know, like they're all sort of in their own strange carny world, and the Undertaker was painfully aware and acknowledged like hard truths that you would just expect somebody of Undertaker's stature to never even think about. He said some very sad lines in this documentary which have kind of already become true, bro. Well, he said, I don't want to become a caricature of myself. I don't want to be that guy that the dad is saying to the kid, oh man, you should have seen him 15 years ago. You know?
So I got a theory about those lines and this documentary as a whole. Because
I think it's the same theory as mine.
So the whole documentary was geared at the 2017 WrestleMania and Roman Reigns, right?
Well, the first episode, yeah. Yeah,
well, the first episode, but I got a real feeling the reason they started filming this in 2017 is because he was going to retire. Because remember that match where he leaves his gloves and his hat in the ring, and we all thought it was over. It really feels like this documentary was meant to be The Undertaker's retirement, and they started filming it back then thinking that he was going to retire. And then obviously since then he hasn't. And I don't know, I just thought that's why they started shooting this in 2017, because it was going to be a completely different documentary, you know?
And I think that's probably definitely right, because he was... You've never seen a man more determined that he was actually going to retire than after that match.
I mean, all the stuff before the match with them talking backstage, and then after it, where he was getting help by medical, it just seemed like he thought this was his final match. And then he has one more interview where he was like, "That match was crap. I need to redeem myself." So I think everyone thought, even himself, that was the final match against Roman Reigns, and that's why he lost.
And I think this is going to be the strain of the documentary. It seems like it's a revolving stagnancy of Taker thinking it's going to be his last, looking at the match thinking, but that was crap, I'm going to do it again, and then just doing that eternally until now. My theory on this documentary, I originally thought that this documentary was just pushed forward because of coronavirus. My theory on this documentary now is that they've been altering it as they've been going along, and potentially on the 5th episode, because they keep putting the Boneyard match clips in. I think on the 5th episode, it would be wise, but probably probable as well, that The Undertaker is going to do a final sit-down interview and say, hey, I'm retired now.
That would be a nice end to it, I think, as like a story arc of it. I don't think that's going to happen, though. I don't think Vince will let him retire until he's dead.
I really hope it does, because he's had the Boneyard match, which is the first thing that's come off well for him since, I mean, the last thing that I can remember really enjoying from him was Undertaker versus CM Punk, and that was years ago.
I liked this Roman Reigns match, but I think I liked it because it felt like it was his final match.
Yeah, it was more about the pomp and circumstance, right?
Yeah, I mean, I remember it back with rose-tinted glasses now, but I think at the time it wasn't a great match, was it?
No.
No.
But he did actually have a really fun tag match with Roman Reigns last year at Extreme Rules, which was his best showing because he was in a tag match for years. But that's, I mean, you can't really go home in a tag match, you know?
No.
But I don't know. I think the most Undertaker thing to do is to literally ride into the sunset on that motorcycle. And then because he's finally breaking down the character and finally talking to us as Mark Calloway, I think this is the ideal time to realize he can't go in the ring. He's done his boneyard stuff. And this is the perfect timing, I think, for him to finally get on camera and say, it's been a blast. This is the last you're seeing of me.
That would be a sweet ending, but I can't see his last match being against AJ. I can't see it. Nor as it being a B movie. I reckon he'd want to go out in a proper match. Because he's old school, isn't he?
They're still hyping up AJ having an issue with him as well.
So you reckon maybe a rematch with AJ is his final match?
Maybe, but then, I mean, he's going to kill himself to try and have a 3-star match doing that, isn't he?
Well, I've got a note here that I just don't think there's anybody active that can give Undertaker the send-off that Ric Flair got with Shawn Michaels. In that match, Ric Flair is older than what Undertaker is now. I don't know why Undertaker's more beaten up than what Ric Flair was, but he seems to be. But that match, everyone remembers that match as a 5-star match. It was a great send-off for Ric Flair. It was a great I know he came out of retirement, but in WWE universe, that was his retirement match. And I just feel like there's no one that can give that to Taker.
I don't think anybody's got the matched star power and ability. You've got the star power in people like AJ Styles, but AJ's getting old as well. And then you've got the ability in guys like Seth Rollins, for example, but nobody really wants to see The Undertaker go out with Seth Rollins.
Well, I mean, I just don't want to see Undertaker. See, this is my point I'm making, is that Undertaker lost his shine when the streak was broken.
Yeah.
If the streak still existed up until now, whoever he lost it to, that would have been a very fitting retirement match. Say in 2017, Roman Reigns beat Undertaker for the streak, and then he retired then. I feel like that would have been a very different twist on history.
And you know what? I completely agree with you, but then they managed to save it somewhat by, again, having this sort of retirement match against Roman Reigns. People kind of forgot about the streak that was already broken and thought Roman Reigns can actually retire this guy. And that, again, they managed to save into a second perfect ending. And then he came back again.
So I feel like him giving up the streak, this documentary made it look like he didn't like the streak and he wanted it to be over much earlier than it was. He made it sound like the streak was making it harder for him to work, basically, and it was forcing him to have matches when his body wasn't fit enough. He actually says in the documentary for a 5-year stint, he would have 1 or 2 matches a year and constantly be in surgery after that match, rehabbing and training for the next match, and those 5 years were hell for him.
Yeah, and that was just sounded brutal, and it was really added to by Triple H's comments saying that the hardest thing he's ever done is doing the 1 a year thing.
Yeah.
It was a really, really interesting perspective that I've never thought about before, of the fact, I think Stone Cold Steve Austin said it, that being on the road all the time keeps you on the road. Yeah. And when you come back for once a year, it's not just going to knock your anxiety, but it's also going to completely ruin your body, because your body finally gets used to being healed, and then you go back in.
Yeah, your body's just not used to it, and it's a lot of people obviously that think wrestling's fake, and it's hard, even for us fans that love it, it's hard for us to realize how much your body goes through turmoil in these matches. But taking these bumps actually hurt. And you're right, it was Stone Cold that said that when you're taking bump night after night, your body is used to it, and when your body's not used to it, it hurts 10 times more.
Yeah.
So it's a weird perspective as a fan to think like that. We would think having 1 or 2 matches a year would be easier. It's just an easy paycheck. But actually, and like you said, Triple H and Shawn Michaels, it's hurting them more.
Well, I mean, it's like a permanent meme, isn't it? The part-timers.
Yeah.
Come in, waltz in, make a load of money, and then go away again. But I mean, it gives me more respect for The Rock, really.
Yeah.
Full-time wrestling career, full-time acting career, and hangs for a match. I mean, 12, 13 years after he was retired.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I thought it'd be easier, but obviously not. So he makes it sound like he wanted to give up the streak because he thought in that time that if he gave up the streak, then life would become easier for him. He wouldn't have to be in this constant revolving door of surgeries. But it sounded like once the streak was over, the pressures from Vince and from WWE only became worse for him to get into shape and prove himself.
Vince is a bastard, isn't he?
This documentary made Vince looks horrible. That final scene, it wasn't the very final scene, but it was towards the end at that WrestleMania in 2017. I mean, before the match, we see, I don't know what it was. They were putting some liquid into Taker's knee. And then after the match, they're taking that out, and then they're also draining blood from his knee, which he's also having a problem with it. And then Vince walks in the room and is like, why haven't you come to see me? And Taker's like, this is as far as I could get. And I collapsed. It's like, what the fuck, Vince? I mean, he's this old, and you forced him into this massive main event.
I don't know though. That this is only the first episode. I know Vince turns up a lot more in the next couple of episodes, but it is clear that Vince has a lot of respect for Taker. Just the very fact that he left before WrestleMania was finished to go to the hospital with Undertaker says something. At WrestleMania, Vince McMahon got in the ambulance with the Undertaker. That's crazy to me.
Vince does care about... I think Vince cares about all of his stuff, but I think he has a very backwards way of looking after people than what the modern world does.
But I think that's exactly why Taker loves them. They're two of a dying breed. That's why Vince pushes Ricochet for a couple of weeks, and then Ricochet shits his pants because he loses in 7 seconds to Brock Lesnar. And then Vince says, well, that's it. You're jobbing now.
Yeah.
Because I think Undertaker and Vince just think in a completely different way that is becoming extinct.
For all the reasons we love Undertaker, and this documentary is going to paint him in a good light, I think a lot of those same things are going to paint Vince in a very bad light as a boss.
We'll see. One question I was going to ask you, was there any one moment that kind of got to you as a wrestling fan and as a guy that's grown up 20 years watching Undertaker?
I've already mentioned is when he lost his mojo, when he suffered a concussion against Brock, and then the following WrestleMania against Bray Wyatt, was it? He felt like he couldn't go out there and he couldn't perform to the same level, and he had like the same jitters, the same nerves that a rookie at WrestleMania would be feeling. Yeah. And it was Triple H to go up to him and be like, "You're the fucking man. You're Undertaker."
That was really cool footage that they had.
Yeah. And like, Undertaker just had to be like, "Oh yeah, WrestleMania is me." Yeah. That and like the injury stuff. Like I just.
Well, everybody was crying quite a bit apparently to the very sad piano melody of Taker's theme tune.
Oh yeah, that was good. I liked that.
He was trying to put his coat on. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I liked that. It was really good.
The bit that actually sort of affected me a little bit was just when he's sitting in a car and he just says they say fighters can get old in one fight. I thought I loved that. I just loved that.
There was a lot of moments where I felt like he didn't want to go on, but he had this sense of pride where he has to carry on.
Do you remember that Bray Wyatt match?
I don't remember the match. I remember it happening.
It was complete news to me. They could have filmed it for the documentary, and I would have said, "Oh, that's cool. Why didn't they do that?"
That's fantastic. I remember it was a thing because I remember thinking Bray Wyatt is the one that should have beat him to beat the streak because the characters were so similar.
Yeah.
But I don't remember much details actually about the match. It's not a rememberable one.
There's a few little moments in here that I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed seeing some footage before they filmed everything for the network. Like just some of the sort of earlier WrestleManias, and specifically seems like out of character footage with Undertaker and Kurt Angle from 2001.
Yeah, that was cool.
And did you see Mick Foley's jacket at the Hall of Fame ceremony?
Yeah.
I thought you'd enjoy that.
Oh, he looked in really bad shape, though. Do you see him walking around?
Yeah. Well, he looked like Undertaker walking around.
Yeah, I mean, they both looked in really bad shape. I liked a lot of the, we go on about him a lot, the Chris Jericho stuff out of character. He seems like a really cool guy backstage.
What did you think about Chris being allowed to turn up in this? It just seems a little too unpetty for WWE's taste.
It was Chris Jericho, and there was a lot of JR as well.
Yeah.
Chris Jericho had a reason to be in the documentary. He was maybe not needed, but it was good that he was there.
It just feels like they pulled out all of the stops for this one, and they got rid of their usual WWE way of doing things and just realized it didn't matter because this was more important.
Maybe you're right. Maybe this is leading up to Taker's retirement then, and he has full control over the way it's shot and what happens in it.
Regardless of what happens at the end, I really do think that WWE think this is the most important thing they put out on network.
Ever?
Yeah.
More than their live shows? Or you mean just
No,
like
on network, extra content.
Yeah. No,
It feels super important, and the way that they hype it up on every single Raw show. I know you're not watching Raw at the moment, but fucking Undertaker and Becky Lynch, I used to like both of them, and now they're on screen with the same material every 5 minutes, and it's very much overkill.
I just want to say that I thoroughly enjoyed listening to a 15-minute podcast talking about Raw rather than spending 3 hours of my life watching it.
I was thinking this today. The only reason I watch Raw is because I'm doing something else while watching Raw that between you and me, I get paid for. So I really don't blame you right now with obviously the current circumstances, you not wanting to sit there for 2 hours and 20 minutes watching this product.
It comes to something when you're enjoying Impact more than you're enjoying what is meant to be the best wrestling show in the world.
I think I'm enjoying Impact more than...
Oh, mate, I cannot tell you how much excitement I have for when New Japan runs their first show.
Tell me more.
No, there's nothing else to say. They've not teased anything. They're not even given a date. I cannot wait until New Japan finally runs a show.
When did they stop?
They stopped pretty much at the beginning of quarantine. Japan took the quarantine a lot more seriously than the rest of the world. And New Japan, a lot like Ring of Honor and MLW, has continued to pay all of their wrestlers throughout this. But they've not run any shows. Instead, they've been doing stuff on their network, talking, interviews, silly podcast things, which I haven't really bothered watching. But I can't wait till they run a show, man. I think that's what's missing in my life right now.
What? Not like real life, just fake Japanese wrestling life.
Just in my wrestling life, that's what's missing.
Right, well, I'll give you a little bit of an update on WWE, considering that I've spent the last 2 weeks writing notes on it for no particular reason, because we don't talk about it. I've got one problem, which is current throughout WWE's entire programming, including the show that you watched this week, NXT. Not thinking about the important little things. I just want to take you to SmackDown, just for a quick minute, about last Friday's SmackDown. I'm not going to talk to you about the awful opening segment with Otis in which he gets fat shamed and mocked for having learning disabilities. We don't need to go there.
Classic WWE. Classic. Oh, no. Vintage. Vintage WWE right there.
Yeah. They went straight into it. I know that we were both feeling a bit frustrated with... We were talking about the Kane thing and the Otis having the same weight and how they're making like fat spots. They didn't care this week. They just went straight into pictures of childhood Otis, teenage Otis, and just making one after the other flubber jokes. But what I wanted to talk about at the end of the Money in the Bank, I know I don't really want to take you back that much because I know it hurts you. What was the memory now? What was the focal point of that match? What caused Otis to get the championship?
Well, AJ dropped it.
Why did AJ drop it?
Oh, because Elias smashed Corbin with the guitar.
Right. Why Elias smashed Corbin
since.
with the guitar, I'm not really sure, considering Elias won.
Yeah.
But if you want to build that match up, and it's the closing point of your pay-per-view, where do you stick the match?
What do you mean? Well, like their next match?
Yeah.
On the next pay-per-view?
It was on SmackDown.
Right.
Elias won in 10 minutes.
Is this before or after Corbin invaded Raw to have his big moment with Drew?
So this was before. So what you've done here is...
Oh my god. What?
You reignite a feud that nobody wants, that the person reigniting it has already won. You put that on the end focal point of your pay-per-view. You have the rematch on the TV the next week. You have the winner who came after the loser for no apparent reason just to beat him again. Then you have the guy that you're promoting for your next flagship show to bring viewers over to Raw lose.
This is ridiculous. So you're telling me on Raw they announced this wild card and the first, whatever it's called now, and the first major match was going to be Drew versus Baron Corbin, and then on the SmackDown,
which in itself is not like a great.
Yeah, that's the star. That's the star we're bringing over from the other show. He's going to bring in ratings, sure, whatever.
Yeah.
And then you make him lose, and then on Friday night you're like, oh, okay, I'll tune into Raw to see if he can win the championship now that fucking Elias beat him. What sensible booking?
Okay, I want to take you forward to a show you did watch, NXT. So
NXT was a great show.
But can you let me know what happened in the opening match?
So in the opening match, we got Matt Riddle and Timothy Thatcher. And they're this makeshift tag team. And I haven't seen them in ages. Basically, they're defending, and they kind of blow up in mid-match. I just love it how Matt Riddle, like in that entrance, he kicks his flip-flops at Thatcher. And that ignites the rage to begin with. Nice. Yeah, basically, Thatcher does the classic heel move of just leaving the match, leaving his partner to do a tag match completely by himself, and they lose the belts.
Okay.
And then backstage, Matt Riddle is on a Zoom call with William Regal, and he's like, I need a match with this guy. We got to settle our score. We've not been on the same page for forever. Make it happen. Then another segment, Thatcher attacks him backstage in what was I thought was a great spot. He grabs a TV monitor and smashes it over Matt Riddle's head. And I was like, where the fuck was that in Money in the Bank? That's the spot anyway, whatever.
My point here though is they eventually had a match in the main event, right?
Yeah, and then I was getting
which was good.
Apparently. Yeah, it was fantastic. I didn't pick up on it, but looking back I see it, but I think it was Alvarez said it, that they never hit the ropes once. There was no whips or anything like that. It was just a fist fight in the middle of the ring. These two went to war with each other in an MMA style fight, and it was really fun.
I think I want to see that. I think I will be checking that out. My point though is you got the opening match. Thatcher walks out, classic heel turn. What's that? That's the start of an angle. Where do we resolve it?
This isn't over, if that's what you're saying.
But where do we have the first match?
On the later in the main event.
On the same show.
Yeah.
Why?
So do you not like stories that happen in one show?
No.
Oh, okay.
To me it just defeats the idea of a feud.
This is by no means over. I'm pretty sure.
No, but I mean, I'm not saying that Timothy Thatcher and Matt Riddle are main event WWE, right? But if you're starting an angle with Brody Lee and Jon Moxley, and halfway through the show, Lee attacks Moxley, do you then have Lee versus Moxley in the main event of the same show?
I guess not.
I mean, you could take a week or two. I'm not saying anything against the match or the angle because I've heard the match is really good and I actually want to check it out. But if you've actually got a feud going on, whether it's lower card, mid card, or upper card, and you want to play it for a couple of weeks, at least give it a week until a match, you know? Yeah,
I get that. But I do like stories that pan out in one show. And I think a lot of the time on Raw, there's a problem where there's so many storylines happening at once. By the time we're at the end, I've forgotten what happened at the beginning.
That's true. Okay.
And next week, I'm like, I don't know what these people are doing, and I don't care. But on the other hand, I see what you're saying. Like, if you want to big up this big storyline, don't give your blow-off match right at the beginning.
My last point through the course of the shows, I just wanted to do a little SmackDown, NXT, Raw, dropping the ball on the small things. The first match we get is Humberto Carrillo coming down because Seth Rollins has attacked his mentor, Rey Mysterio. And Humberto Carrillo now has a match with Murphy. They advertised last week on Raw and built up over a week on Twitter and social media Aleister Black versus Murphy for this week's Raw after Aleister Black beat up Murphy the week before. Murphy gives so much of a shit about the menace and power of Aleister Black that he takes a match with Humberto Carrillo before his match with Aleister Black on the same show. So doesn't that kind of make you feel that Aleister Black isn't really something to worry about?
Yeah, like he's an afterthought now. Did Aleister Black win?
He did after, I think, DQ. Yeah, DQ. This is another thing I wanted to talk about very quickly. Our boy Austin Theory, who's lost his voice.
I've heard on yesterday's Raw he's changed stables.
Yeah, and it very much felt like the Mexicans beating up the gringo. it was like there was really no reason or need for it. Garza had like a little tiny argument that they teased, and then Garza just looked at Andrade and they were like, nah, fuck it. This guy's not one of us.
Just messing.
And then apparently Austin Theory is still at ringside 20 minutes later. He's still just sitting there. And that's why Seth Rollins goes over to him. Seth Rollins doesn't find him in the back dejected or anything. No, he's actually just sitting usually where the announce table is.
So I got two things about this. One, I like that Austin Theory is being used. There's a storyline of him being picked up as a follower and he's gonna like evolve and Rollins is gonna save him. Mm-hmm. But doesn't this mean that Seth Rollins' stable is weaker and looks shitter than Selina's beefy men? Because they beat him up and left him out to dry, but he's good enough for Rollins. You see what I mean?
I get your point here. I think it's saved by the fact that Seth Rollins is a delusional cult leader. And just like the Dark Order, I don't think they're necessarily looking for prowess. They're looking for people that they can toss.
Yeah, I mean,
the ring to.
Yeah, his whole thing is that he's the savior of wrestling. So I get it fits, but I'm just saying right now, at the end of this one episode, Selina's beefy men are higher up the totem pole.
Sure. I do agree, but again, I think Selina's beefy men kind of need to be, considering they've lost everything for the last 2 months.
Yeah, true. They need to win somewhere.
Honestly, between Charlotte now being the new John Cena, the Street Profits having an axe throwing competition, and Apollo Crews once again looking like a dickhead babyface, I thought that this was actually a step forward. And I'm glad Austin Theory is actually doing something, because I know we expressed concern with this guy a couple of weeks ago, and I've kind of taken him under my wing now, just because
rooting for him.
I kind of am, just because I hated I don't particularly like the guy, but I hate everything they did with him. Considering they have refused to give him a character and refused to give him anything but scraps, I think this is the perfect fit. He doesn't need to have a character now. He's like Murphy's underling, you know. He's like deep down in the hierarchy. He's getting the slippers, you know. So
tell me about this Intercontinental tournament.
Oh, do you know what happens? Do you know what happens, mate, if you stay at home and look after yourself during a pandemic?
Yeah, you lose your spot, even though apparently you're not going to lose your spot.
You get it stripped from you.
This is bullshit, right? This is, like, they said to everyone, you're not going to lose your spot on the card if you stay home because either you're ill or you're not scared, but for whatever reason. And then he's been stripped of the belt. Not even, I mean, I know WWE don't do this, but an interim champion. Like, that would have been a nicer way around it, I think.
This is typical proper dickhead behavior. There's no need to strip him of the belt. Nobody really cares whether the belt is defended right now or not. If they wanted to fill time by doing a tournament, as you say, I've never understood why they don't like the whole idea of an interim champion. It feels that it does the tournament time because it feels like they just wanted to push a tournament, right? To have something to do, something of interest while it's all ticking over. They
saw AEW do a tournament and they're like, oh, hey, they're beating us in the ratings. Maybe we need one.
I'm sure they actually do sit and watch AEW.
It's exactly the same thing. It's a tournament for a belt, for a vacant belt. It's the same thing.
But
anyway,
the whole idea of an interim champion makes complete sense to me. Somebody can't defend, but they haven't yet gone over the period of defense. They could have had the same tournament with the same outcome and then Sami Zayn can come back. And if they want him to lose it, if they want to beat him up over the fact that he's looking after himself, do it then.
And
there's no need to do it right now.
Exactly. And you know what sells pay-per-views for Dana White and his UFC is champion versus champion matches. They fucking love it. They love interim champions because then they can push this whole the undefeated champion versus the undisputed champion. It's a big thing. And WWE could just do the same thing. I mean, the poster would write itself. Both of them holding a belt.
I don't know whether you remember this, but while Andrade was US champion, he failed, I think, his second wellness violation. I don't want to say that for sure. It might have been his first. But he had a 30 to 60 day suspension. The US championship stayed around his waist. So what WWE is telling Sami Zayn is that by protecting himself in a pandemic, he is more of a dickhead than somebody that takes drugs to beef themselves up.
They don't like Sami because when he didn't go over to Saudi for whatever show, because he's not allowed to, he would probably be shot.
I mean, it's not a good idea, is it? And like, I really don't think that you should try and force somebody in that very fragile political situation to go over to that show. I think surely that's completely 100% fine, right?
Yeah, and when he protested that he wasn't doing the show, he lost his spot on the card. He was off TV for like a month or whatever. There's another situation which I can't remember, and something similar happened. And I'm just saying that I can't wait until his contract runs out and he goes somewhere else, because I think he's a great wrestler, and I always thought he was a bit of a weird fit for WWE anyway. But I reckon he would be treated much better even in Impact. Never mind AEW or wherever.
He needs to go, man. He's one of the few for me that have survived the WWE stink. I don't want to go on too many tangents here, but they did the Kevin Owens show on Raw this week, and I was falling asleep in it. Kevin Owens has been completely ruined for me over the last couple of years. When he first came out, and I think he beat Cena for the US Championship on his first night, he was on fire. And he's just got, the same way we used to say a guy had the Impact stink, the TNA stink. For me, there's certain guys now that have got the WWE stink that I've got no interest in seeing on my screen. And Sami Zayn has managed to somehow survive that. And
because he's so charismatic, he's so lovable, and his character either is a face or a heel, he's just great at it. So I think he gets himself over despite what WWE do to him.
Yeah, he'll prosper anywhere else. But if you want to talk about WWE pettiness and the championship tournament, Daniel Bryan had a match with Drew Gulak, which was my favorite match of the week.
I heard this was a great match.
It wasn't quite as good as the Elimination Chamber match that they had. It was a singles match at Elimination Chamber. It wasn't quite as good as that, but it's the best TV match I've seen in forever. Like, obviously, I didn't see the Matt Riddle match, but it's also the freshest thing I've seen on SmackDown in ages. And do you know what? Obviously, we will talk about in a minute. Drew Gulak contract has expired, and at the current moment, he's a free agent. This happened overnight after Gulak match on SmackDown, and I just want to point out, man, Gulak's a clever dude. Getting a fantastic marquee match with Daniel Bryan on live TV as a CV builder a day before your contract expires. Well done. But on Twitter the next day, I just wanted to point out, they replayed the video and they also put it on Facebook, Instagram, everywhere else, and said, Daniel Bryan training practice with his trainer, or something like that. Daniel Bryan spars in a match with his training partner. Because they refused to name Gulak.
They black out his name now.
Yeah.
So I've heard that this is more a negotiation technique rather than him wanting out of the company. That he was still on his 205 contract and he's worth a lot more now.
I didn't realize he might still be on his 205 live contract.
Which, to be fair, I mean, not even a couple of months ago, WWE was throwing ridiculous money at people to make sure they didn't go anywhere else. Absolutely absurd money to just jobbers.
Yeah. And
he's definitely worth the money now. He's got TV time. He's having some of the best matches. He's definitely worth, I don't know if he's worth what he wants. I don't know how much he wants, but he's worth more than probably what he's on.
He's a very valuable part of the SmackDown brand, in my opinion, because I said on this podcast 2-3 weeks ago, Drew Gulak was my favorite wrestler because he can fill time without making it uncomfortable. he can produce a good match that makes you think sometimes some of WWE stuff's great. If he's on the 205 Live contract, that's ridiculous, and I can completely see why he wanted more money. But I didn't think that had anything to do with it. I just assumed that to be as risky as he is, asking for more money during a crisis, I just assumed he had something lined up almost immediately in his back pocket.
Well, this is what I'm thinking. If his plan is to jump to AEW, I don't think that's a good idea. I think his current push in SmackDown would be better than what he'd get in AEW. He might get an initial great debut, but I think his name value isn't big enough. He'd kind of get lost in the shuffle in the mid card. He wouldn't get a massive push.
I agree. I can see him like having a feud with Shawn Spears or whatever.
Yeah. I think it's better off staying on SmackDown.
But just speaking personally, like in the midst of coronavirus, you're sticking with your job.
Yeah, definitely.
You're making money from it and you're getting paid. There's not a lot of job opportunities right now, and it's very risky to just sort of leave it and go somewhere else.
On the other hand, WWE usually signs people to at least 5 years, and if he's 5 years on 205 money, that's a long time to be selling yourself off for. So
You've got to be a little bit pissed off if Dana Brooke's making more money on a longer contract than you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he's just gambling on himself, and he's hoping that they sort this out.
I'm not sure that happened.
Well, other releases elsewhere, this is a really fun one. Sting has been released from his Legends contract. And do you know how the world found out about Sting being released?
No, I didn't even know he was released from a Legends contract.
Exactly, nobody knew. So he was also released during the Black Wednesday firings.
What?
Yeah, and it was the action figure company Mattel. They're the ones that actually came out on Twitter and they apologized that Sting will not be on the next lineup of action figures because he's unavailable.
I love it.
And
that only happens in the wrestling world, bro.
I know, right? And then, in all of the replies, there is one reply from Cody Rhodes with like a gif of him like having his ear out listening.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen that. Yeah.
And then it was Lance Archer had a text, something about Lance Archer doing a good job, and then Sting replies like, "You're doing great, buddy. Would love to see you live." And then Cody replies with like big eyes emoji.
This is the bit I saw, but I had no idea that Sting had even had a WWE Legends contract.
So Cody's done this kind of thing before with people that are free agents. He was doing it with the Revival a lot. That as people's contracts as people are coming available, he's doing all of this sly stuff on Twitter. So everyone's thinking that Sting might go to AEW.
Do you think that Cody spends too much time and money hunting after really old legends?
Yeah.
It's one thing I've noticed about the product. I mean, Jake the Snake's actually doing something, but they've got a confrontation next week between Jake the Snake and Arn Anderson. You tell me DDP turns up quite a bit. He's courting Sting. Like, do you think that AEW needs these guys to be valid?
I fully get what you're saying, but much like Undertaker, Sting needs a perfect retirement match.
Oh, you want to see Sting go again?
I want him to have one more retirement match at a big pay-per-view with a build against either Kenny Omega, Cody, maybe Chris Jericho, someone that can pull him through a great match. I don't want to see a Kenny match. Maybe not Kenny. But you know what you get what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And what you're saying, I think that you've potentially got your Shawn Michaels, Ric Flair in a Sting Cody.
Yeah, exactly. Sting Cody would be a great match. Just something that sends Sting off, and then maybe he sticks around as a manager or comment. I don't know if he'd be very good as a commentator.
Sting Cody in AEW is so WCW, bro. Like the good side of WCW.
That's what Cody wants to be this entire time. He's trying to just emulate his father, I think, in a good way. He's not trying to copy. He's trying to bring a different side of wrestling that's been missing for so long.
That's actually what's made me get deeper into the product. I'm starting to realize that AEW is a combination of all of the best things that I remember nostalgically about WCW. It's got none of the shit and none of the dirge. It's all of the greatest things about old WCW storylines and ideas and presentation. which
Yep.
is why I'm really digging it. Can we get into AEW? Because I really, again, enjoyed it this
Let's
week.
do AEW. And then every now and then they have that one ECW vibing match, which I know you hate, but it makes me love it.
They're catering to all audiences, give or take. Give or take.
And they've got a very New Japan, well, not New Japan, but Japan as a whole style, which I really want you to get in Japan, man.
Oh, you fucking fanboys, bro.
Oh, before we do AEW, there's one question I wanted to ask you about all of WWE the last couple of weeks. Have you seen any suicide dives and Spanish flies, things like that?
Not that I'm aware of.
So I heard a very funny quote that Vince McMahon is furious with the pandemic for the fact that the pandemic's slowing him and his company down. So he's got beef with a virus. And one of the things that he now has decided that he hates and he's blaming on the pandemic is suicide dives. Apparently there's too many because of the quarantine. So all dives to outside the ring have been banned across WWE, and I didn't know if this was true or not, so I was just wondering if maybe you've seen any in any matches.
Actually thinking about it, I don't think I have.
Yes, I think it's legit.
I'm get pretty annoyed with all the fucking flippy dips.
Yeah, I know you do.
And I haven't really noticed any of them. And what I did enjoy this week was a really old school babyface heel match between Drew McIntyre and Baron Corbin, which had no flippy dips too. So no, I think that might be right. Talking of flippy dips, my least favorite part of the show, the guy that squarely aimed at you, who I detest, is Excalibur.
What's wrong with Excalibur?
I shout at my TV, bro.
No.
Every single time he says "Tope Suicida."
Yeah, well, because that's what it is.
It's not. It's a suicide dive. And at one time he said something or other, some like fancy schmancy move, and JR called him out and said, "Are you saying crossbody?" And as much as I don't like Excalibur on commentary, it sounds like a fan on commentary, bro. I want to hear a professional.
No, I'm
not done yet. God damn it. No, what I was going to say was, as much as I don't like Excalibur, this is where AEW once again does it right. They got Tony Schiavone, they got JR, they got guys for me, and they got an Excalibur for you as well.
I love Tony, though.
Oh, no, I'm not saying that Tony and JR are like exclusive to me. They're well-rounded. When JR gets angry old man at Excalibur for calling names pretentious things, that's for me. And then Excalibur using 2020 terminology, that's for you. They managed to do it simultaneously. They managed to cater for you and cater for me.
Yeah, they do. I love Salty JR, though.
So do I.
I love it when he does that. Excalibur is the owner and promoter of Pro Wrestling Guerrilla in California.
Oh, cool. Nerd in a mask.
I don't think we need to go play-by-play all the way through Dynamite, but let's start with the opening segment.
Okay, this was quite a trip.
I want your opinion first, because I'm gonna have a rant.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
I thought Cody looked like a fucking superstar.
Did he though?
I did. See, I saw this backlash, but I saw it after I watched the show.
You know what I'm gonna say, don't you?
WWE shit.
Just okay. Let me get it off my chest, right? So, Lance Archer and Jake the Snake are in the ring doing their thing, whatever, and we cut to a multi-camera setup of Cody in his truck. There's two cameras on the outside and a camera inside, so already it looks fake as fuck.
Didn't he look cool though?
Right, no, this is what I'm gonna say. The truck that has his logo of his neck tattoo on it does look kind of cool. It's got Stone Cold vibes about it. He's revving the truck, he's wheel spinning, and it looks like, oh shit, he's going to run over Lance Archer. Because why wouldn't I think that? A couple of weeks ago, they ran over Sammy Guevara and fucking killed him with a golf cart.
Right.
Lance Archer's 3 times the man. We need 3 times the truck. So And then Cody drives like 3 feet forwards and hits a barrier that has blatantly been placed in his way, and then gets the fuck out, and that's it. And I'm like, what the fuck is the point of this truck being here? And if you look at it, the area he was driving in had a clear driveway all the way to the ring. He could have driven that thing all the way to the ring, climbed out onto the top of his truck, and then like jumped in. And how badass would that have been instead?
You wanted to hear my opinion for all of about 4 seconds.
I'm just saying. Sorry.
So, no, it's fine.
I'm just saying, why couldn't they? They've got no audience. There's no risk of him hitting anyone else. Why couldn't have they just driven a truck and hit the ring, or come all the way through into the arena? It was so silly, and it was so WWE. Like, oh, we've got this cool car in the back. They're gonna fake drive it in and then walk into the arena. Like, no, if you want to do that, drive it into the. We know they can do that. They've done it before. They were doing this shit in the 90s. Why can't they do it now? They can drive vehicles into the. Anyway, I'm done.
I think that this actually shows the difference in our wrestling intelligence. Because I just thought he looked really cool, and it gave me Ryan Gosling driver vibes. And then he smashed something, and I was like, yeah. And I thought he looked great.
But he smashed something that was immediately in front of him. Why did he park there to then drive 2 feet more forward? Why didn't he? Why didn't they start further back? Or
I would assume that he drove in the car because last week Brandy had a snake put on her, but you had to get the golf cart all the way back to the wrestling ring, and he was too late. So this week he's brought his own car, and if Jake the Snake tries his snake shit again, well, boy oh boy, I've got a Range Rover.
Well, then why didn't he drive his truck all the way to the ring? That's even more convenient. He wouldn't have to walk at all.
It was quite awkward when he had to get out of his car and then start up speed again to go hit Lance Archer, I got to admit.
Yeah, I
thought it was okay.
It was okay. I get what they were doing, but it didn't come across. It looked like they were trying to be badass Stone Cold, and it just didn't come across as that.
I still thought that Cody came out great from it. You analyzed it for more than a minute, and sometimes you just shouldn't.
Sometimes wrestling's just wrestling.
Sometimes wrestling's just wrestling.
Don't think about it.
Jake the Snake got pretty misogynistic here.
Yeah, which I'm not against because he's a bad guy from the 80s.
No, I get that. And my first note is I'm not sure that this is any longer him going off script. Seems like this is purposely the direction that they want him to go in. But still, just a bit shocking to hear on TV at this age and day and age. I mean, my girlfriend turned around and sort of just gave me a look. I was like, don't worry, he's a bad guy.
Well, yeah, that's the thinking, isn't it? Because, we like Cody, so it's fine. This guy can say whatever he wants because everybody wants Cody to win anyway.
Yeah, but very risque. After you've talked about it, I do agree that it came off badly in execution.
Yeah.
But I think the intention was there. I think they should have explained better that the whole point that Cody didn't come out to see Brandy was the fact that he was ages away, and that's probably why he used the car this time.
Yeah, no, I didn't get that, but as you're saying it, that makes sense in why they had the truck there, but that's not how it felt watching it. It felt like they wanted to do a big stunt, and it's just like, if there's no audience, why can't you do a bigger stunt?
Yeah. And as you say, especially after what we saw last week, balls to the wall. I think that's another reason why you thought it was a bit WWE. It's because you'd actually seen some decent, crazy stuff. And then they it was kind of like the equivalent of when, I don't know whether you remember John Cena graffitied poop on JBL's limo.
Yeah, I remember that because I remember the actual match afterwards, them having a parking lot brawl.
Yeah. No, I understand what you're saying. Anyway, I liked it because I didn't think about it.
Well, what was your favourite part of the card overall?
Wasn't prepared for this.
Did you know Jungle Boy is only 22?
Jungle Boy was a standout to me.
And really he's only 22. This boy is going to be a megastar. So I think Jungle Boy is going to be the next Shawn Michaels. He's only 22 and he's already one of the biggest names on a national TV show.
They've got some hot talents, right?
They have.
MJF is 24. Jungle
Yeah.
Boy's 22. Jungle Boy really appeals to me.
Darby Allin as well is, I can't remember his age, but he's stupidly young.
Yeah. Jungle Boy is somebody that really stood out to me this week because I know that this is my fault and you always have a go at me for it, but I have not been a regular AEW viewer, and I thought Jurassic Express was a giant carny gimmick pretending to be an actual dinosaur and little Marco stunt. And I kind of forgot about Jungle Boy, but he shines, man. When his wrestling skill is great. He's got this sort of natural babyface charisma that is rare to see, at least on WWE TV. And I think they could, they're putting him together like Darby, MJF, to push them to the absolute sky in a couple of years.
They're going to be huge, man. I can just see us in 10 years' time from now. The main event will be Jungle Boy under a different name versus MJF, and that will be the biggest thing in wrestling.
Yeah, but isn't this fantastic? They're already putting new stars together and already slowly building them up so that in a couple of years there'll be marquee matches.
Yeah.
And they've only been in business for a year. Just stop and think about that. That's crazy. They're already building for the future and they haven't even started building for the present yet.
They're building stars better than anyone else's. I really like Luchasaurus as well, though.
I'm not having a go at Luchasaurus. I enjoy his gimmick. I just thought that it was the only people that came to mind was Luchasaurus and Marco Stunt, and them put together is not something I can tolerate. Luchasaurus by himself and Jungle Boy by himself, or Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy, great. Marco Stunt, no, bro.
Early on in the show, and I think my favorite thing of the entire thing was the women's four-way match. This is the first time in AEW that I've actually been excited going forwards with the women's division.
Yeah.
I think all four of them coming out of this match look more exciting than what they did. Even though there was one winner, obviously, all of them came. Well, maybe not Penelope Ford so much, but they all were interesting to me. And I think that's because they set up a grudge match, if you like, against Britt Baker and Statlander for the pay-per-view.
I think Britt Baker really stands out amongst these four.
They've been pushing her as a heel for a while now. She is the star of the women's division.
But especially given how flat she came across, I think 1 year ago at Double or Nothing last year, I thought, why is this woman being pushed, you know? And she's really, really gained momentum over the time. And I really do like the fact that the women's division is finally feels like it's gaining some momentum. And people are slowly starting to get built up, even if I'm not behind them really yet, like... is it Kushida?
Yeah.
It's just nice that they are starting to realize that women exist in AEW, because it's felt like an afterthought since the whole company started. I don't know whether you agree with me.
Yeah, no, I agree. It really has been an afterthought. I really like Chris Statlander, and I think what's really funny is I think her gimmick in the Indies was that she was an actual alien, but here they've played it down that she just likes dressing up and pretending to be from outer space.
And that's cool. I can deal with that a lot better. That's something that I'd actually like AEW to think about doing more often. Taking the indies, keeping it indie, and brushing it into professionality.
Well, just like Luchasaurus on the indies, he was 100,000-year-old dinosaur. Whereas here, he's not. He's just dressed up with a really cool mask, and he talks. And he uses dinosaur puns from time to time in his promos. And it works because it's a really cool character, but like it's still believable.
I've found in my notes my favorite part of AEW this week, and it had nothing to do with any storyline whatsoever. That mental kick from Phoenix to Orange Cassidy. That was absolutely crazy. Just came out of nowhere and hit him in the head.
Do you see now what I've been saying about Phoenix? He is awesome.
He's definitely a good pick to have as a body in the ladder match coming up.
He's going to do insane things in that. He's going to be... I mean, you don't like it so much, but he's going to be flipping around like crazy off those ladders.
I don't know, that Jungle Boy match, as much as I enjoy him and I think he's got something, there were points in that where I felt it was becoming too close to spots. It never actually quite got there. It never got to the level where I thought, I'm watching an AEW spots match. But there were points, and Jungle Boy was one of the offenders. And I think this is something that really needs to be concentrated on. They've got Arn Anderson in the back. They've got Jake Roberts in the back. Teach these guys to sell.
I think, unfortunately, he's 22, and that's just the new style.
But I understand that, but he's also moldable. Spots have got their place in matches, but just sell. Overarching thing that I have in AEW over and over again is just not selling. You can do a whole flurry. You can do a thing where he's like, Shawn Michaels used to do it all the time, where he'd come back from nowhere, he didn't sell anything, and he'd keep going for like a minute or two, and then he'd just collapse. As soon as if I'm watching a 10-minute match, and for a good 4 minutes, non-stop spots, and then we fade for about 20 seconds, it brings me out of the match. It's not me having an old man Jim Cornette rant at a cloud. It brings me out of being invested when I'm just watching these guys basically ballroom dance.
No,
They're doing choreography.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Sometimes it feels like a set piece rather than an actual story and a flow of a fight.
Yeah, and I really like a lot of these guys, and I'm not bitter like Cornette is, and I really want this thing to go well and succeed, and I really want to be invested in these guys, and it's the only thing that nags me over and over again. They forget that a match is also emotion and a match is also psychology, and they just go straight into the spots, which look really cool, but aren't going to make you as much money as selling from them.
Yeah, I get that. There needs to be more story focus.
I'm quite enjoying the oddball pairing of Kenny Omega and Matt Hardy.
Yeah, I got a note on this that I feel like Hardy's a bit shoehorned into. I really feel like, I know Adam Page doesn't want to work because of the virus and stuff, but I really feel if he was part of this, it would be much better. And because then you'd have the tag champions doing this run with different members of the Inner Circle. Right now, it feels a bit silly that someone else is with the tag champion kind of being shoehorned into this story.
And that's my note too. I really think they should be having some Hangman Page vignettes, even if they're just on his phone, in the back, in the woods, wherever he is. I read
Keeping
on the
him
internet,
relevant.
I read on the internet that he's on that BTE shite, and they're showing him every week on that. But that's not TV, bro, and I'm not watching it.
Oh, the Young Bucks YouTube channel.
Yeah, apparently he's on that every week.
Yeah, I don't watch that either. So whatever's happening there, I don't know either.
I thought Santana and Ortiz in this match continue to be my favorite tag team.
Okay. I don't know if I like them anymore.
Why?
I don't know. I liked their run in Impact, although when they were feuding with the Lucha Brothers, I've always been a massive Lucha Brothers fan. So I've always preferred them over, they were LAX in Impact. But when they've come here, Ortiz feels like he's a comedy character. He's always biting the rope or shouting weird crap unnecessarily.
I noticed that was another Salty JR comment. Excalibur commented on Ortiz doing his little raking thing.
Yeah.
On what a fiery move it was, and JR said, "You ever seen anybody win with that, Excalibur?"
And then Santana looks like $1 million, and he's really serious. He's got this real hard man edge to him, and it feels like they're separating as a tag team. They don't feel like a unit anymore.
I don't get the lack of unity thing with Santana and Ortiz. I think they complement each other quite well, because Ortiz is like the little animal that needs to be controlled every now and again, and Santana is the guy that keeps the team together. That being said, I do understand where you're coming from. It's very much I think Santana is Alexa Bliss and Ortiz is Nikki Cross.
But for some reason that works. The pairing of those two, I'm not against. But it just feels like these two, I don't know, when they were LAX and Impact, they worked, and they were slightly different characters, I guess, and they were a unit, and now I don't know.
I still think that you might be in the minority here. I think Santana and Ortiz are...
I definitely am. I know they're a very over tag team.
They're my favorite tag team, and shout out Tony Thomas. They're actually my dad's favorite tag team as well. He very much enjoys them.
I need to get you watching some Lucha Bros matches, man. They're just crazy.
Santana was instantly over for me, by the way. One of the Young Bucks spit their gum at him. He picked it off the floor, ate it, and then kicked him in the balls. I still remember that spot. I think it was one of the pay-per-views. But yeah. I just wanted to quickly go back to your point about Santana. Guy is a breakout star.
He is, right?
Something about him that I can see in a couple of years, just like a Big E situation. He's leaving that team and becoming a marquee main eventer. he's just got that look. He's got that natural charisma. He's got that sort of complete natural understanding of the fact that the camera's always on. He's got a believability to him. He's got a good work rate. I see Santana in like 5, 6, 7 years with the new up and comers like Darby and stuff.
Oh, I hate it when they split up tag teams, though. Even if it's a tag team I'm not too keen on, I hate it when they split them. I like tag teams for life, you know? Like
your boys, the Dudley boys.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, like my boys.
To me, it completely depends on the tag team.
If they've just been thrown together, if they're a Frankenstein tag team, sure. But if it's someone established as someone that's been a unit like most of their career, I hate it when they split them.
I do understand where you're coming from. It's a difficult point, but when you naturally see one guy 3 times the credibility and potential money making of the other guy, I think if it's done well, they need to. I think we've both been destroyed by WWE building a tag team and then breaking it down. But it doesn't always have to be like that.
You mentioned JR. There was one other thing he said in this match towards the beginning that I really liked. So before the bell, these 2 tag teams are brawling. And then once they get in and the bell rings, he goes, they're clocked in now and they can finally get paid and we've got a match here. So hang on. This was my thinking. In the kayfabe world, does that mean when a monster heel beats the shit out of his opponent and they never end up having a match because the guy's too injured to have the match, then the guy doesn't get paid?
I guess so.
So
it's
why?
Bell to bell, right? Wins and losses.
So why the hell would a heel ever do that so that they don't get paid?
Anger.
That spot now has completely been ruined for me. In a kayfabe world, you wouldn't do this unless you got paid. I mean, even in the real world, they're only doing this as a job to get paid. So, you see what I said?
I completely understand you. Yeah, it doesn't bother me, though.
It just now makes the heel look really stupid. He doesn't look like a badass anymore, if you really think about it.
It depends what kind of heel it is, I guess.
I guess so. Anyway, I just thought it was a funny line. It's just like you've been saying, the commentary team always have an answer for everything. And most of the time that's good, but then it's made a plot hole somewhere else.
Yeah, I think it's one of the negatives of having both Tony Schiavone and Jim Ross on your team. They're such professionals that they can be over-professional, which can lead you to think a little bit too much about what they're saying. Yeah. Which then goes the other way.
Exactly what I've done. I've thought too much about this silly little world that we live in.
What day did you watch AEW?
Would have been Thursday morning.
How are you feeling?
About what?
General.
What?
I've noticed.
Feeling great, buddy. Thanks for asking.
I've just noticed that you've really been digging into this analysis, like of Cody's car and.
Yeah, I think you enjoyed this episode of Dynamite more than me because we haven't even got to the best bit yet. You wait for this.
I just want to let you know that I first saw Colt Cabana wearing an Insane Clown Posse t-shirt in the women's match, and I was very close to turning it off. And I'm being serious about that because I thought Colt Cabana was going to turn up later in the show.
You hate him.
And he did.
You hate him so much.
I detest Colt Cabana. I'd rather spend 8 days with Dolph Ziggler.
You know he used to be color commentator for Ring of Honor.
I'm not planning on going into the back catalogue for that.
Can I tell you the thing I hated most about this show?
Go on.
First of all, I'm going to start it earlier in the show. Pineapple Pete has a promo, and the promo is a little bit silly in itself, but his delivery is really good, and he's talking about how his real name's Shug D, but Chris Jericho has recrowned him as Pineapple Pete. His life is great as Pete. No, it rhymed. I can't remember what it was, and he's got like a pineapple he's drinking out of. A coconut he's drinking out of. And I thought, hey, it's a really silly character, and you know what? He's been built up over these weeks as this silly guy, and his delivery was great. I'm really looking forward to their match. So we get to their match. Pineapple Pete comes out. He's doing his thing, and I'm really into this guy. For some reason, because they built him over for weeks. And I'm like, you know what? And I've got AEW have built this thing now where they've always been like, hey, we've got these guys, and they can't beat our main eventers, but hey, Jungle Boy can take Chris Jericho to a 20-minute time limit draw. Darby Allin did it to Cody. All these lower guys can compete. They're just not good enough to get the win, but they're there. And then Chris Jericho comes out and fucking squashes him with one move.
Great stuff.
Pineapple Pete loses with what this guy could have been cemented as someone on the roster. He could have been a somebody.
No, great stuff.
No, listen to me.
Enjoyed it.
If Pineapple Pete nailed 10 moves, a badass suplex, and Chris Jericho, and then got a close, not even a close, just a slight 2 count, and then Chris Jericho's fuck this, and then does his move, and then you would be like, okay, Pineapple Pete can go. I'll watch him next week in the opening match. But now he's dead in the water. So what have we spent weeks doing? It's pointless.
I heavily disagree with you.
Pineapple Pete even got pyro.
I heavily disagree.
You don't give pyro to a jobber.
I love that sentence. Say that out of context of what we're doing right now. I heavily disagree. This was one of my highlights of the show because it proved to me that AEW doesn't have to build every fucker up every time all the time. Chris Jericho is Chris Jericho. He's built up guys like Darby Allin and Jungle Boy because Darby Allin and Jungle Boy, as we've said, are both really young, incredibly talented, and have a good character.
I've never seen this guy before ever, but he looks like he looks good.
I got literally in my notes, I've word for word, Jericho jobbed Pete out and made him noticeable at the same time. The very fact that he's wearing Pete's shirt shows that he's trying to get him over.
I just feel like if Pete had got a 1 count or had just nailed a move, that would have made me interested to watch him again. Because right now I don't care.
But
or maybe I do care. Maybe that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Well, there you go. But you can't have every guy getting a fucking 2 count to Chris Jericho. I think Chris Jericho is beyond liberal with the stuff that he gives to guys. That he literally picked this guy out of the crowd and then beat him in a move. So what? We now know who Pineapple Pete is. Millions of people all over the world now know who Pineapple Pete is. Chris Jericho wore Pineapple Pete's t-shirt while beating Pineapple Pete. Pineapple Pete got TV time with Chris Jericho. I think that's enough. You get a random guy in to SmackDown, nameless, that Sheamus kills in half a minute. Chris Jericho needed a squash because Chris Jericho hasn't had a singles match since he lost the championship to Moxley. And what Chris Jericho decided to do, instead of just squashing a random guy from QT Marshall's gym, was build a jobber up to then job him out. And I liked it.
Well, when you say it like that, but they've invested me in this guy. I just wanted to, I don't know.
Go buy a t-shirt then, bro. AEW.com.
Well, anyway, so what's your opinion on the promo immediately after this match when Chris Jericho calls out Vanguard, which is Matt Hardy's drone? They have a little back and forth, which I'm assuming you didn't understand because that's been going on quite a while.
No idea.
And yeah, there is this great, it's fantastic, where Chris Jericho is in a hot tub and he's doing a piece to Matt Hardy, and the drone comes, he's in like his backyard, and the drone comes in, and then Chris Jericho is like, release the hounds. And have you seen Chris Jericho's dogs? They're all like chihuahuas and tiny things. All these dogs come running out chasing after the drone. Then Chris Jericho gets out of his hot tub and he's just wearing leather trousers and a scarf in his hot tub. It's just so bad it's good. Anyway, so he's got history with this drone and he wanted to recruit it to the Inner Circle, which even I can see that silliness. And then he decides to smash it with the bat. What's your feelings? What's your take?
I had no idea why Chris Jericho was shouting at a drone. I had no idea why he was treating the drone like a cruel ex-mistress.
I think even us that have been watching AEW don't understand why he's talking to a drone.
I did enjoy all of the Inner Circle beating the drone up with a baseball bat and then talking shit at it on the floor.
Like it's a real person.
But this does give me warning signs.
I think
With-
this is over now. I think this was the killing of the cheesy, silly Matt Hardy stuff.
Wait, yeah, but Jericho is really, really good at comedy, and he gets most of it over. Jericho is in control of a lot of creative. Jericho did this drone thing. Jericho does the Brady Bunch inner circle stuff. I think that it's got to be reined in. It's funny at the moment. Once again, I'm always looking to the future with AEW because I want them to do well. I think some of it's got to be reined in before Jericho becomes AEW's Hogan. The more control you give Jericho, the more he finds shit funny. The more you allow him to beat up a drone on TV, or you allow him to have his 5-10 minute segments. At the moment, they're great. At the moment, Jericho is getting everyone over. And I said this, I went on a massive praise for Chris Jericho last week. I just see a danger sign to it. It starts to become cliquey funny, just for the very same reason I don't like being the elite. I don't like that stuff. I just think they got to be careful of still putting the inner circle over as a formidable force. And maybe, I know it's the pandemic, but they should stop doing some of this comedy shit and actually beat the fuck out of some guys.
Do you think Chris Jericho is getting free reign to do whatever he wants to do because they have a limited roster and they need more TV time to be covered?
I think it's a bit of that, but I think it is a lot of the fact that Chris Jericho knows that he got AEW a TV deal, and AEW knows that Chris Jericho got them a TV deal. I'm not saying that Chris Jericho is the same as Hulk Hogan. I'm not saying that he's going to go into business for himself. I am saying that right now he thinks everything he does is great because everything he does is great. But how long is that going to last? And by the time
it might never end. It might always be great.
It might always be great, but it might not. And by the time that it's not great, Chris Jericho is controlling the company.
So his promo was challenging the Elite to a Stadium Stampede match, which I can only gather is a Falls Count anywhere throughout the entire football stadium.
I would assume, yeah.
I don't know if this was before you were watching, but there was this match advertised as Blood and Guts, and it was meant to be the Elite versus the Inner Circle.
I read something about this. What happened to that? I thought that Blood and Guts was a separate pay-per-view.
No, it was going to be like a special Dynamite. It was going to be so basically Cody wants to do War Games, but they don't have the rights to call it War Games, so they called it Blood and Guts.
Bad name.
Yeah, right. Awful name. But so they were going to do their own version of War Games, and then the pandemic started, and they thought they were going to lose a lot of TV ratings, so they decided to not do it 1 week. And then the next week, someone was injured or something, so they put it on hold. And then this whole pandemic thing, and it's kind of quietly forgot about, except for a lot of fans are like, are we ever going to have this match? It just kind of feels like this match is that. It
makes a lot more sense to me to have Elite versus Inner Circle on a pay-per-view. I don't know why you'd throw that away on Dynamite.
Because they do 4 pay-per-views a year, so AEW's strategy is to have some big blow-off matches on Dynamites just to keep the interest alive.
Okay. I understand that, but I mean, they've done such a fantastic job of building Inner Circle up as a great stable within a matter of months. I know that the Elite has got its own fan base. It just feels like a money match to me. It feels like maybe not WWE level, but it feels like definitely some of the big Bound for Glory stable matches that we've seen in the past.
Yeah, I mean, and it wasn't exactly like, oh, next week we're going to do this. They were promoting this match for like 2 months. They're like, oh, it's going to be the Blood and Guts episode of Dynamite. And they do that often. They do say, oh, in a month's time we're going to be doing this on Dynamite. You get it for free. So they do. I like that about
AEW. I like the fact that they build stuff up weeks in advance for TV.
They do build it. So I get what you're saying, like, oh, let's put this on a pay-per-view. But then the same thinking is the company is trying to think fans first, and they don't want to have 12 pay-per-views that cost $25, $30. They want to have 4 big ones, and they're really important, or 5 big ones, whatever.
Yeah.
So some of their big matches are just going to be on TV, and when they are big matches on TV, they give it enough promotion, I think, for it to be worthwhile.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Before I was watching full time again, and by the way, I'm a full time AEW watcher now. But before I was watching full time again, it made so much news that it actually got to me, and I started following the feud. Was when Cody had a cage match, I think, with Wardlow.
Yeah, that was just before his match with MJF at the paper.
They built that up so well that it was coming into all different frontiers of my social media. And I actually became invested in the idea that they were investing in a TV match, and I really liked the idea of that.
That was a dope cage match.
I think it's a great idea, and I really do enjoy it. Now you've explained it a little bit more, I can see why it was initially a Dynamite.
Did you see the lashings that Cody had to take?
Yeah,
the week before? Yeah.
When I wasn't watching AEW week to week, I followed all of the Cody MJF stuff. It drew me in, even though I wasn't watching the rest of the show.
Yeah, and like you just said, I think that cage match seems so important because like 4-5 weeks before it happened, it was like MJF has these three stipulations, and the last one is going to be the cage match the week before they finally have their match.
It was some of the best building that to a feud that I've seen in years, actually.
Unless there's anything else you want to talk on Dynamite, we could probably move to maybe the biggest headline, which was also the smallest thing to happen on the show.
I've got 2-3 comments. I really like the fact that they talk about the coronavirus every week. I think it's a great move. I think it makes things more relatable, and I think we therefore care more about what's actually going on in the show.
I mean, it's not like it's hard to miss. I don't know why WWE ignore it, because we're all living it. I mean, we're all thinking about it every day.
I assume that they think that by ignoring it, they're drawing us into their reality.
They're doing us a service.
But as my girlfriend pointed out, just the idea that they talk about it makes her feel like she's not watching a kids show. That it's an actual television show, just like any other television show on television. I think that's a pretty important thing. Just leveling with people and talking to them on a human level, especially if you're running a fake wrestling show. Bringing them into the real world with you, I think is quite important thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's better to talk about it than to pretend it doesn't exist.
I also just wanted to mention that I'm still not a fan of Dark Order, still not a fan of this feud, but I did really like Brody Lee tossing a follower into the ring. He just like picked him up and threw him into the ring, and that's what I want to see more of from this sort of cult leader figure.
What do you think about Brody Lee always carrying the belt around now? He stole it and now he's carrying it around.
I think it gives them something to do. I prefer it to Brody Lee trying to be all culty with Jon Moxley, because they're just two characters that don't mix. The Dark Order doesn't mix with Jon Moxley. Nobody's going to out-psych him. Nobody's going to play like manipulative tricks on him. It's not going to happen. So it just gives them something for Jon Moxley to be angry about.
Yeah.
Almost instant fix. How do we build this feud when we started it 2 weeks ago?
That's exactly it. I think it's a fix. I feel like this is clutching at straws because the whole stealing the belt storyline feels like we've seen a million times before.
Yeah.
It seems like 101 in the playbook. I don't know. It just doesn't feel. It feels very generic. It doesn't feel very organic.
It feels like they've realized that they've really messed up Brody Lee, and they're kind of fixing a continual bleeding with plasters and just piling them on.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So at the pay-per-view, the TNT Championship will be presented by none other than the baddest man on the planet, Iron Mike Tyson.
Why?
Not only why, but why were we told by JR in just like an image, and nobody in the opening segment with Cody and Lance Archer and Jake the Snake, nothing was said.
It was about 6-7 seconds, wasn't it?
It was the silliest reveal ever. It was like, oh, here's like the most famous boxer ever. You're going to see him at pay-per-view, but now let's go and have a main event.
I really don't like this at all.
I get why they're doing it, because it brings a lot of lapsed wrestling fans or non-wrestling fans. It brings more exposure to them. And also,
okay.
Do you know about Mike Tyson? At the moment, he's training for exhibition matches. He's making a return to the ring.
Oh, he's doing a Floyd Mayweather.
Not quite. He's having exhibition charity matches, so he's not making a professional return.
Does anybody want to watch that?
The general consensus seems to be no. Most boxing and MMA fans don't want to see it. There's a lot of training footage of him, and he can still go, man. He's got the speed, he's got the strength. He looks dangerous. Maybe he's just on I think he's on a lot of testosterone and some performance enhancers like that.
Okay, I mean, so if that's the cross pollination, if that's the advertising, then I see why they're doing it. From a wrestling fan's perspective, Mike Tyson was an integral part of wrestling history at WrestleMania 14, which was in 1998. So we're now approaching 22 years later that Mike Tyson is doing the same thing.
I'm surprised he hasn't been used in wrestling more since then.
I heard that Eric Bischoff tried to get him on board with something after WWE, as if to say like fuck WWE, but he wasn't going with it, which is eventually why I think they went with the Dennis Rodman route. Yeah. I don't really understand why hasn't been used much either. I assume that's down to Mike Tyson. But
apparently he's a big wrestling fan though, so I don't know why he wouldn't want to. Apparently he was a guest host of Raw back in that era, but that's all he's done with wrestling since.
I don't remember that. I don't like the fact that they're using Mike Tyson, as I've said before. Why? I don't think it's because he's having charity exhibition matches. I think it's because it reminds wrestling fans of that time that he sided with Austin. And I don't like that. AEW should be its own thing. Once again, this is a TNA move, in my opinion.
Well, also,
they shouldn't be getting guys like that.
Well, also, the pay-per-view before the coronavirus was meant to take place in Las Vegas. It's obviously not now. But I think there was a lot of... I think Mike Tyson may have been brought in to bring the like Vegas vibes to the show.
Bro, how many people you get? Ask Cormier nicely. You don't need Mike Tyson. You could have gone into anyone in the MMA world. Not only would you have looked more current, but you would have looked cooler. Because MMA is the new boxing. And if they wanted to recreate a Mike Tyson moment, like they did with WWE, they shouldn't actually physically recreate the Mike Tyson moment with Mike Tyson.
Don't you think Tony Khan has already reached out to McGregor's managers?
I don't think McGregor's a good fit though, because McGregor is too far involved in his own personality.
Yeah,
he needs somebody
he is the current day Mike Tyson. There's no one on the same level.
I think people would pop for a Cormier. Cormier would do it as well.
No, he would do it. He likes wrestling, but not as much as McGregor. If McGregor was on it, they would sell many more pay-per-views, even if he was just there with a championship belt.
If you want a bad guy, go get a John Bones Jones.
Yeah, that's also a good call, I think.
I don't see the need for a Mike Tyson recreating his own moment when now he's old man Mike Tyson. And also, from a casual perspective, from a normal human being who doesn't follow combat sports, we now no longer know Mike Tyson as the most dangerous man in the world. He might still be, but people no longer know him as that. They know him as the joking, smiling guy from The Hangover.
That's what I was going to say. Kids are going to know him from The Hangover, not from being the baddest man.
Yeah.
So,
you know him as the happy, laughing, friendly guy. I've also seen cry tears and tears and tears. I don't know whether you ever heard that really sad story. His daughter hung herself on his weights in his house.
Yeah.
That blew up as well. So but what I'm saying from that is that he's now known as like Mr. Nice Guy, you know?
Yeah.
Like a real human being with emotions.
Well, I mean that's a testament to him as a person. He managed to change himself around in his personal life.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, top tier MMA guys, there's not many people whose name has the same draw as the name Mike Tyson. I'm just saying on paper, the name is a big draw.
I get the point. I just thought that AEW were beyond the name big draw, and they were actually trying to be the future, the present, and the future. MMA is the present and the future.
Do you remember the very first show when Bret Hart brought out the AEW World Championship?
Yeah.
And Bret Hart looked like he didn't want to be there. And the whole segment fell short because it looked like Bret Hart was just there for $1 million paycheck.
This is why I'm saying I really don't like the idea of... I said this about an hour ago. I really don't like the idea of Cody hunting down the old guys for no particular reason.
Yeah, it feels like it's going to be that segment again.
Yeah.
Like, it's just going to it's just cross promotion whether Mike Tyson is doing these fights or not, or just he wants to keep his name out there.
They might well do a Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali was at WrestleMania 1 and didn't really do that much. He was just there, and people liked the fact that he was just there. They might go down that route. Mike Tyson, it might not be Carney, it might not be, fixed. Mike Tyson might literally just hand the championship over, and that would make a cool image.
But as long as he looks like he's happy to be there and he knows all the names of the people in the ring, because I think Bret Hart didn't even know who he was talking to apart from Chris Jericho.
That just seems like Bret in any interview now. Yeah.
I missed a note that I make this note every week for about
I
3
make
weeks.
a note on. Sorry.
No, yours sounds more exciting.
I make a note on AEW every single week, and I never get to it. So my note from AEW 6th of May is don't understand the Sean Spears stuff. Still got a feud with Cody that Cody has forgotten about. Looks like a loser.
Oh, his betting thing.
Then I've got a note from the 13th of May. Why the fuck is Sean Spears on my TV looking like a nerd every single week? What are they doing with him?
I don't know why you think this is a note that you forget to say. Every podcast, you manage to get your Sean Spears hate in. You don't forget, bro. It's always there.
Sean Spears still looks like an absolute loser.
We know you don't. We know.
Why is Sean Spears holding signs now with Judas on it? And why got like pieces of wood that he clacks together?
Oh, Judas is Chris Jericho's nickname.
No, I get that, but why is he a fucking nerd about it? Sean Spears is a loser, bro.
No, he's just betting on the heels. I'm not defending him. I don't understand it.
So, but they've dropped the betting thing now.
Oh, have they? I thought he was still like holding up dollars and stuff.
I haven't noticed it. I wouldn't mind it if Sean Spears was just a jobber now, but every couple of weeks and every couple of months they still try and build him up and they give him video packages. Like there was this whole video package 2 weeks ago about how he hasn't forgot about Cody. Cody's forgotten about him.
Yep. Definitely has.
This is my weekly, I hope Austin Theory finds his voice and Sean Spears goes away comment.
I feel like we should have a segment every week where you can just get your Sean Spears hate in.
I thought about this earlier. I think I need a Sean Spears / Austin Theory segment.
Okay. We'll keep up with that.
Okay.
It'll be on your thing. I've got a note that I write down every single week, but I want it to be its own thing, so I'll do it next week.
Oh, great, cool. I'm glad I interrupted you. I've got one more note before we should probably wrap this up. NWA are continuing the seemingly outside zany shit that Impact and WWE have been pulling by starting a new show called Carneyland, which is airing on Tuesday, set in the most famous wrestling location ever, really. It's up there with Madison Square Garden, Philly, and Tampa Beach. Set in parts unknown.
And somewhere Jim Cornette has just hung himself.
I don't think he's hung himself. He's hung someone.
He's just shot his co-host. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I mean, he would go off just on the name alone, but this is the NWA.
I have noticed that NWA does quite a few things that Jim Cornette wouldn't actually like. NWA is kind of a false fish to me. It's advertised itself as the old school promotion that I always wanted. And they had an amazing match with Cody Rhodes versus Nick Aldis, one of their pay-per-views, which was my match of the year. And when they do stuff like that, I can't fault it. And I don't mind the stupid gimmick stuff like the Question, and I can't remember his name, Aaron Stevens, who used to be with The Miz, Damien Sandow.
Yeah.
I don't mind gimmicky stuff like that, but the whole thing feels like a permanent gimmick. There's no good matches. There's no real driving character like old school NWA.
And you know why that is? That's because Billy Corgan doesn't want to own NWA. He wants to own 2012 TNA. That's what he
Yeah.
want. That's what he wanted to do. But the only wrestling company for sale was NWA, so he just had to go there.
It really kind of does feel like that, and you hear all the old guys and especially all the middle-aged guys praising it all the time, when a lot of the time I don't see the difference between that and any other wrestling.
It's got a different look, sure, with the whole TV studio, but the actual wrestling isn't any different. And I think because of the TV studio, the two don't mesh very well, and that's making a shitter product.
I think take away the aesthetic and you've got worse promos and worse matches than most modern day promotions.
But then people like me that love New Japan and love the Young Bucks, the aesthetic takes me out of the wrestling show because there's no spectacle in it now. So I don't like the presentation, I don't like the product, and I don't like the people. There's nothing on it worth watching for someone like me.
Yeah, I was really into it for the first couple of weeks. As I said, I still think that you should check out the main event of NWA's 70th anniversary pay-per-view. One of my favorite matches of the last decade. And I really hope that Billy Corgan pulls something out of his ass, because I don't know whether you know, but I'm currently painting Billy Corgan's entire discography on canvas. I really like Billy Corgan, but I can't get behind his current product. But I'll see what Carneyland is like.
Well, yeah, I'll check it out too. The only note for NWA I got this week is that I watched it. I think I watched it immediately after I watched Dynamite, and the women's match on Dynamite just blew me away, and I was so excited for the two women's matches on the upcoming pay-per-view that it really put a spotlight on how bad women's wrestling was on the NWA show.
Dynamite got a lot of flack for thinking about the women last, as they rightly should. The women's division was really, really bad, but
They're on the
NWA's was undoubtedly worse. 5-minute build each show, which they had to include the promo, the match, and the after promo in. Anyway, I hope they do something eventually. I think NWA are one of the companies that are going to be hardest hit by this pandemic, because they just don't have the funds. They don't really have the venue or the guys to put together a promotion right now.
Yeah, out of the big names, they'll be the biggest struggle. I feel bad for all the really small companies. I don't know how they're gonna survive.
Yeah.
Well, next week, I think our show will pretty much be entirely dedicated to AEW's Double or Nothing.
Looking forward to it.